This podcast is a collaboration between Costard and Touchstone Productions and the Dads from the Crypt podcast.
Once an ugly, ugly person stumbled upon a box of screaming yellow zonkers and stuffed some into his face. Well, they were great. Whoa, they was more than great. They was a magical butter-glazed popcorn snack. So if you're ugly or even semi-rotten looking, try screaming yellow zonkers. Maybe they'll change your life. Maybe not.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the How Not to Make a Movie podcast. I'm Alan Katz.
And I'm Gil Adler.
Our guest today is, I guess I'm really the other Allan Katz, because Alan Katz, A-L-L-A-N Katz, was here first. And when I arrived in town, as we'll describe in 1985, well, he was here first, and I had to live in his shadow. And as you'll hear, he cast a very long shadow because he's a very talented man with an incredible credits. He was the youngest writer on Laugh-In. He wrote for All in the Family, Sanford and Son, The Mary Tyler Moore Show, MASH, The Cher Show, Rhoda, Roseanne, and Blossom, among many others.
He's a very funny guy in and of himself, and we had a wonderful interview with him.
Even if he is the other Allan Katz. The other Allan Katz began his professional life as an ad man at a small agency in Chicago, where he scored a huge success coming up with the ad campaign for a snack called Screaming Yellow Zonkers. Back in the 60s, that ad campaign was huge. What gave you the idea to take this and move out to Los Angeles?
It wasn't my idea.
The other Allan Katz.
Gary Owens, who was going to become the announcer voice for Laugh-In, saw the box of Screaming Yellow Zonkers in the supermarket out here because it had just started in its distribution. And he brought it to the attention of George Schlatter, who was producing the show. And he said, geez, this is really crazy. I think maybe I should see this guy. So they tracked me down, found me in Chicago.
It was like the joke wall. I mean, really, the box was like the joke wall.
And I didn't know who George was. And I saw George this last weekend. He has a book coming out, and he did a book signing. But I talk to him now pretty frequently. And he just said, I met with him. I didn't know who the hell he was. I think most of America didn't, but I didn't know when he just called out and said, George Schlatter wants to talk to you. And I said, why? And who is he? And he says, well, I'm doing a show out in Los Angeles and Hollywood. And I thought maybe you might want to come out and meet with me, maybe see about writing on it. And I said, well, I'm kind of busy now. And I hung up on him.
That was the best possible response.
Yeah.
It just makes them want you so much more, doesn't it?
That's what George said to me. George said, nobody else had ever hung up on me before.
Right.
And I said, well,
genius, man. It was genius.
If I'd have known it was genius, I wouldn't have done it. I didn't know any better.
Yeah, of course. But really, in hindsight, it was, oh my God.
In hindsight, it worked. And I came out there and I was, because I didn't know much about how difficult it was to get work and how there were people just knocking on doors and sending in spec scripts and material. And I had some stuff from the ad agency, but I sent it over and he said, and I met with him and the two people that he had hired to be head writers. And so I met with these guys and we talked, and I didn't know any better. they said, well, we're going to be doing something like the cocktail party and writing contemporary jokes. I said, well, I can do that. And they said, and then we'll be doing like little sketches, 30-second things, 40-second bits and whatever. I said, fine. So they said, you think you could do it? I said, sure, I could do it. So I was lucky. I stumbled into it.
You were something that they wanted. That you never had to sell yourself to them. They always had to sell themselves to you. And once that happened, there really is. There's a kind of magic dust. You had broken through in a very particular way.
Well, I was on the show for the run of the show, but during that time, when you were on hiatus, you could do other shows. So I had a partner at the time that they partnered me up with, Don Rio, and we started writing half-hour half-hour shows.
And suddenly, then you wrote an episode of All in the Family, an episode of Sanford and Son. In '73, you wrote an episode of the Mary Tyler Moore Show. I mean,
Right.
you guys weren't writing crap. You were
Well,
at the top of CBS's food chain there.
yeah,
with
well,
All in the Family.
one thing got another, and we ended up doing a whole bunch of Sanford and Sons, and then we ended up making deals someplace. That's how we ended up writing and producing MASH.
But before you got to MASH, I mean, there are just some interesting shows that you did that I just want to point to, because having just looked and seen the path that got you to where you got, there were just some things that I think deserve to be highlighted. So from '73 to '74, you did a thing called the ABC Comedy News.
Yes, yeah.
And the creative team included, holy shit, Bob and Ray,
Yep.
Dick Gregory, Mort Saul, Peter Schickley, Joan Rivers, Kenneth Mars, Ronnie Graham, Barry Levinson, Pat McCormick, Don Novello, Richard Shaw, Robert Klein, and Stan Freeberg.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. What a
They obviously couldn't get anybody, huh?
Well, we were
what a room.
You get people like that, you don't have to write well.
Oh my
You
god.
just have to get out of their way.
True. Wow. What it's
Well, you know,
it's like the
also-
Algonquin Round Table.
Yeah, right. These people had no place else to go.
I feel for them. I pity each and every one of them.
Was Richard Pryor mentioned in that? Did you see that?
He wasn't mentioned here, but I know I read that he
He
did.
did it. I think we did 3 or 4 of those. So we had
Now the
and
show.
Albert Brooks did one too.
Wow. I mean, wow. Amazing
know.
talent. The show was produced on an irregular schedule.
Right.
And apparently it was reportedly loathed by the real ABC affiliate news teams who refused to provide intros because they felt they were being mocked.
Well, they understood our intention.
Well, okay, so they weren't stupid.
Right, exactly. Well, it was, if you can't mock them, what are you doing?
What else are they there for?
Yeah.
Surely. Then in 1975, you do a thing called We'll Get By, which was created and written by Alan Alda.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a good relationship with him before we did MASH, but we ended up writing a couple of episodes for a show that he created. By the way, a great guy. I've got so many Alan Alda stories, so if you want to hear any of them,
Well, we absolutely do. When we land at MASH, we're getting there. But like I said, there are so many.
This is your show, so I'll just you lead me around by the nose.
I'm just looking at everything that you've done, and that's wow. This is all a prelude to when you and I, when we first destroy my microphone, to when you and I first bumped into each other.
Yeah,
I wanted to.
It's my fault you can't use your own name.
I wanted
and then years later you would call me.
I needed to create the context. You can't understand my conundrum until you understand the wall, the wall
Right,
that
yes.
I was. All right, so. So what did you do then? Then you did a thing called the Cher Show.
Yeah.
And it's
You've heard of her?
boy, and we'll come back for stories.
Yeah,
indeed.
please.
Because you told me one the other day that was just hilarious. I don't know if you want to repeat it here, but
I don't know if it's true.
then you can absolutely tell it, because
So
who knows?
I'll let you tell it and I'll laugh.
Indeed. Rhoda, you did 24 episodes of Rhoda,
Right.
and then you do this thing called MASH.
Yeah, you've heard of it.
One of the most successful TV shows ever, and syndication. And my God,
Yeah.
what that must be worth in residual payments.
Well, for other people, yes. We did one of those really dumb show business things. We wrote and produced a full season of it. They offered to have us take it over and do it for the rest of the run of the show. But our agents thought it would be better if we made a development deal with a studio and created our own shows so we would make more money. So we did that. And we didn't realize how difficult it is to get a show on the air and have it stay on the air, get the right time slot, the right lead in, all the rest of that stuff. And so years later, I take a look back and I say, what were we thinking?
Mhm.
On and I'm still friendly with all the MASH people. And they say to us, why did you leave? We loved you guys. You did a great. I said, well, we were advised to do that.
It's when that was really a very similar situation to Tales from the Crypt. Gil and I compare Tales from the Crypt to capturing lightning in a bottle.
Right. Yeah.
Just, I don't know, the stars align, the right people show up, and the next thing you know, there is a creative enterprise that's rare.
Yeah.
It's a special experience.
And it's hard to duplicate because it wasn't all under your control.
Yeah.
When I think about MASH, I think about Larry Gelbart, who was one of the all-time great writers and great people. He only had MASH. They tried to do After MASH, and that didn't work. And then he had something called United States, it was like a sitcom for PBS. It was really heady, but nobody watched it. And that was it. My favorite story about getting MASH on the air, and I'll do it quickly. Larry Gelbart and Gene Reynolds came to 20th Century Fox where they had a deal, and they said, we want to do MASH for television. And they said, no, we're not interested. It's too dark. It's not really that funny.
That was 20th Century Fox, right?
Right.
20th Century Fox are the same people who said to George Lucas, oh, you want the merchandising to Star Wars? Have it.
Sure.
Carry on.
So they keep going back and saying, we want to do MASH because it'll be this, we can do some valuable things. And they were not interested in it. So at one point, Larry said, I don't want to be involved in it anymore. So they came to Gene Reynolds and they said, all right, we know you want to do MASH. We'll make a deal with you. We've got another property that we really like. If you will develop that for television and we get it on the air and you guarantee that you will stay with that show for the life of that show, then we will guarantee you that we will do a pilot for MASH, and I don't know how many episodes, 4 maybe. So Gene Reynolds agreed to do it. Now here's the show, and you can look it up because I think they did an entire season of it. It was The King and I, starring Yul Brynner, without music. So I'm trying to think.
That's a good idea.
What did they buy?
Oh boy,
they got Yul Brynner in a sitcom.
A sitcom. That's exactly it.
Well, he was a very funny guy.
Oh, please! People are still asking.
Wow,
amazing.
Wow, that's it. Breath taken away.
Dems is the guys making those decisions at the studios. Things haven't changed much.
Right. I think that they accidentally get lucky.
That is all that ever happens with the people in suits.
Yeah.
I remember as a kid in New York, I went to see a play called The Apple Tree.
Oh, sure.
Which was the first time I was exposed to the star of MASH.
Yes, that's right. Alan Alda did.
Alan Alda. And I loved him. I walked out of that show. I think Sheldon Harnick and Jerry Bach wrote the score. I just loved it, and loved him. And then when MASH hit the television, I was like, oh, that's the guy from Apple Tree. Oh, I love that guy.
I'm trying to remember, who was the co-star with him? Was there a female lead in that as well? Or am I just making that up?
No, there was.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I'm still trying to think of the restaurant.
We cut and paste this, so it's no worries.
I want to say
when you're done, if I'm not in it, I'll understand. I was doing a show with Julie Harris, a half-hour sitcom, and Jerry Paris was directing and was doing the warm up, and the audience was brought in from God knows where. So here's Julie Harris, and he introduces her. He says, Julie Harris, and she comes out. Nobody knows who the fuck she is, and he says, don't you remember she starred on Broadway in I Am a Camera? And these people just kind of looked left and right and shrugged, and then he just kind of moved on.
Yeah, what's Broadway? They're looking at each other saying,
exactly.
What the hell is Broadway?
Yeah.
Oh dear. You did the Cher show.
Yes, I did.
And
and the Cher show did me.
boy, we have experienced, all of us, working with huge personalities that are cut an awful lot of slack.
Yes.
I don't know if that's a good thing. I'm pretty sure it's a bad thing. It always seems to work out for them, however.
Yeah.
Cher's a very talented person.
Yep.
But as a lot of very talented people are sometimes, not necessarily easy to work with or for.
Yeah. Yeah, she was worth it in a sense. I mean, the audience loved her, and she was one of those kinds of people that if she didn't do the comedy well enough, they didn't care.
Yeah.
She looked great to them.
Yeah.
She moved great. She sang great. She mixed it up with a lot of musical talent and comic people, and I think that maybe they felt that same when she didn't rehearse. They felt maybe a vulnerability in her that they could identify with. I don't know.
Gil and I have said many times on this podcast, as having cast a lot of actors, we've never cast an actor to act, especially for the camera. Now, for the stage, you got to act, you have to reach the person in the back row. But the camera, no. The acting is what's going to end up on the cutting room floor. We just need you to be. And the more nakedly honest you can be, and however it is that you are nakedly honest, the camera will see every last bit of that.
Yeah.
And I think that's exactly what it is about someone like Cher. And yes, I think the vulnerabilities. It's why a guy like Andy Kaufman, that awkward laugh that some people are incredibly good at.
Right.
It's a particular kind of comedy, but
and what a commitment! What a commitment to that craziness.
Yeah. Because I'm
not sure he had. I'm not sure he had another choice.
I think that's right. I think he took what he had and he put it to the best possible use, which was absolutely an absurdist kind of comedy.
Yeah.
Total disassociation.
Yeah.
And because he was so vulnerable, he got away with it.
Right. And I had this conversation with George Slaughter a couple of days ago about Laugh-In. And the other thing that was unique about Laugh-In, which was also unique about Andy Kaufman, there was a dangerous quality to it.
Yeah.
So it not only wasn't predictable, but there was just something that you'd never quite sure what was going to happen.
There, as a kid watching Laugh-In, it was Monday nights, wasn't it?
Monday nights.
Monday nights. Yeah, it was a Monday night habit, and part of it was that it felt so relevant.
Yeah,
it always felt timely, and I think that contributed to that cutting edge quality. I think later SNL aspired to that same feeling of on the knife's edge.
And that Lorne Michaels was a writer on Laugh-In.
Well, there you go.
No surprise.
The DNA is the DNA is the DNA.
He was there before I was there. Yeah.
Just going back 1 second to the apple tree, I looked it up, and it was Carmen Alvarez and Larry Blyden.
Larry Blyden, God, I remember him.
Yeah, but it was Carmen Alvarez.
So many of these people do Broadway, and you don't know about it.
Yeah.
And you see Larry Blyden hosting a game show, and you say, well, how do they find these guys? Bert Convy was a friend of mine. I did a musical with Harry Nilsson, and Bert was the producer of it, and the rest of that stuff. And a lot of people just knew him from game shows and from doing Johnny Carson.
Right, and not at all from Cabaret.
Right, exactly right.
Yes, we're going to come to your theatrical work.
Pardon me?
We're going to come to your theatrical work. You are Hey, the other Alan Katz, it turns out, is filled with surprises once you actually
Right.
lift the circus tent and look underneath.
I keep wanting to apologize to you because every time you want to go into a different phase of show business, I'm there.
Well, well, so far I've beat you to podcasting, you bastard.
You have.
but I got an idea for us. Oh man, I'll never leave well enough alone.
My first day on Laugh-In, we were right in a writer's room and whatever, but the first time I went down to the set, everything was shot in bits and pieces.
Sure.
Except for the opening monologue and a couple of other things that were done in front of a live audience. George Slaughter, the first day, introduces me to Orson Welles.
Wow.
And I don't know what the hell is going on.
That also makes the show lightning in a bottle because
right.
It really and truly was. Oh my God, that's at least 2 lightnings in a bottle. Oh
yeah, but this was so strange for me because I of course knew who he was and I'd seen him on the big screen and I'd seen him on the small screen, but I'd never seen him in person. He was quite an imposing kind of guy. So George introduces me and he says, Alan, I'd like you to meet Orson Welles. And Orson politely says, it's nice to meet you. And now George walks away. And I'm standing there next to Orson Welles. I don't want to walk away. He's not that kind of guy you skulk away from. But I didn't know what to say to him.
Right.
And so after about, 15, 20 seconds, that felt like an eternity, I turned to him and I said, so what are you doing after the show? And he kind of looked at me like I was pretty nuts. And he said, well, I'm meeting some friends for dinner afterwards. I said, I'd love to join you. And he said, well, they're very close friends of mine and I hadn't seen them in a while. And I said, even better. I just kept pushing things because I was so uncomfortable. Boy, he got it. He grabbed a hold of my arm and he nodded. He smiled and walked away.
I was going to say, so what did you order for dinner?
Humble pie, I believe. Don't you get that way when you get around people who are so celebrated and that you know everything about them and they know nothing about you? And I'll give you one more story like that.
Yeah.
I wrote a musical with Harry Nilsson.
It's called Zapata,
and Bert Convy produced it. And so I do that and I become very friendly with Harry. And Harry's very friendly with the 3 remaining Beatles at the time. And so I'm hanging out with him. And through Marty Feldman, who I met on the Cher Show, I became friendly with the Monty Python guys.
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God.
So show business. So I'm hanging out with Harry and with Eric Idle. And they say to me, why don't you join us for dinner? We're having dinner at a friend's house. And I said, I don't want to butt in. I said, you guys have your dinner or whatever. He said, no, it's okay. It's a friend. It's a small thing. It's just a small group of people. And you're more than welcome. I said, I don't know. And I asked my wife, and my wife was an actress and a model at the time. And she had a commercial that she had to shoot the next day and she didn't want to be up late. So she said, why don't you go? And I said, okay. So I get in the car with them and I said, where are we going? And he said, it's a producer friend. It turns out it's Ahmet Ertegun,
a huge music producer, the founder of Atlantic Records.
We get there and I get out of the car and it's everybody who knows everybody because it's them and their wives. It's Eric and his wife, Tanya, and it's Harry and his wife, Una, and there are the 3 remaining Beatles and their wives. There I was. I'm sitting with Harry and with Eric, who I know, and the 3 remaining Beatles and their wives, who I don't know. And they all knew each other. And I felt like I was at somebody else's high school reunion. I had nothing to say to them.
Well, obviously you invited yourself to dinner.
Well, I was invited, but I'm not sure I said 5 words there. I kept thinking, well, what will I break in and say? I like your music.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. Your music's not bad.
What was
guys.
the idea for the White Album?
Yeah, truly. Yeah, that is a conundrum. What do you
Yeah.
say to break the
What's your
ice with?
favorite sitcom of mine that I've written?
I think you missed the point. I think it just said, do you know my friend Orson Welles?
Yeah.
Indeed. You told me a terrific story the other day about working with Cher.
First one was the monologue where we
Yeah.
monologue
Okay.
for her.
I'll sit
And she-
quietly now.
And well, it's okay. And she shot it that day. So it was fresh in her mind. And that night she went on the Johnny Carson show to promote her show. So she's on the Johnny Carson show. She's sitting on the couch. And all of a sudden she does the monologue, the one that we wrote for her, the one that was shot that day, the one that's going to air in about 2 weeks. And so the next morning, Don and I said to her, Jesus, how could you do that? By the time it airs on your show, it's going to be old news. People have already seen it. And she said, well, it's a true story. I said, well, it's not really a true story. We wrote it. She said, oh, no, it's a true story. It actually happened to me. I said, no, you never told us about that. We wrote. She said, well, it's a true story. It happened to me. Where do you go from there? I said, oh, what a coincidence. We had the cast in for the next show, and we ended up having to do it for 2 shows. But she had gone to New York without telling us and had her face chemically peeled. So she couldn't be there for the rehearsal and for the taping of the first show. And so we're sitting in the rehearsal hall with, I think it was Bill Cosby and Frank Oz and the Muppets and
a couple of people.
Yeah, a couple of people.
As you and I discussed the other day, Gil and I had the pleasure of working with and for Joel Silver.
Right.
And you are at the mercy of people with giant egos, and
you just can't call them. They're not used to being called out on that. And they not only don't like it, it's very injurious to their egos. And so they don't want you around. I remember when I was doing Roseanne, I wrote and produced Roseanne. In the production offices, there was a billboard downstairs, and we would post whatever had been happening in the news about Roseanne. And she came in one day, and she had just done back-to-back covers on People, and she had just done a movie with Meryl Streep. And I said to her, my God, this must be so surreal for you. Like 6 months ago, you were living in a trailer park, and now you've got a #1 show and you're doing all this stuff. And she said, well, my sister and I planned all this. And I said, well, that's kind of magical thinking, though, isn't it? I mean, a lot of people make plans and it happens. She said, no, we planned all this and we knew exactly what was going to happen. And that's how we did it. And I just said, I think it's time for me to stop.
Actually, I think I could have gotten that show instead of you.
No, because you got a call from Tom Arnold.
Yeah, he called me first, man.
Yeah.
He did. He called this Alan Katz first.
Yeah. Now that I think back on it, I wish you had.
Yeah.
If the truth be told, I actually went in there and told them I was Alan Katz.
Well, my advice to you is aim higher.
Well, I knew they wouldn't believe me if I said I was Orson Welles.
Right.
After Roseanne, you seem to have gotten the hell out of TV.
I'm not sure whether I did that or TV did it to me. I haven't looked at my credentials. What did I do anything after that?
It's like there's a line. It's like there's a line, and suddenly you're incredibly. I mean, you're the man.
It's like I'm and then I'm in a coma.
And it's like you fell off a cliff.
Oh, you know what? After that, I took over Fresh Prince, which you won't find there.
Huh.
They brought me in for the last season of Fresh Prince to exec produce it. And I hired the writing staff, including Larry Wilmore, who is a terrific guy.
Oh, yeah. Very talented man.
And then his producers, the first incident was I'm going through the production offices, and there's a big guy walking through the halls there. And I said to him, can I help you? And he said no. And he was a little belligerent, and I was uncomfortable. And I introduced myself, and I said, I'm the exec producer of Fresh Prince. So I can you tell me who you are? And he said, I'm one of the writers. And I said, well, I don't know anything about you. I hired all the other writers. And he said, I'm Will's writer. And I said, oh, okay. I don't know anything about that. What's your name? And he tells me his name. And I said, okay, well, it's nice to meet you, because I'm not going to get confrontational. Right. And I end up talking to CBS. Was CBS?
Fresh Prince was NBC. Yep.
Yeah. They said, this is Will's bodyguard. And what we do is you have the staff write an episode and put his name on it, and then he gets paid. And I said, well, not while I'm running the show. I said, it's a violation of the Writers Guild. I can't do that to a staff of writers, to have them write something, to stay up, to do all the rewrites, to work on it, put somebody else's name on it. I said, you want to give him money? You want to give money? You want to give him health care? Order a script, pay him off. You guys got a lot of money. You can do that kind of thing. But I can't do this. This is unconscionable. That was sort of like, that was like the beginning of the end, and then I was out.
Don't know about the future. That's anybody's game.
You also did took a season on Blossom?
Yeah, did a season, wrote and produced Blossom. Don Rio, my former partner, had written and created that show. Mm-hmm. And he needs someone to take over the last season. I was glad to do it. Maya was just a delight to work with. So was the rest of the cast. I had a really good time.
So that was, by contrast, a healthier environment.
Yeah, much healthier, and I wrote, produced, and directed an episode that got nominated for a Humanities Prize. It was really nice to do something of value. Of course, MASH had that, but this was just something that came my way, and I thought, oh, this would be nice. For a younger audience, it was nice.
Indeed, it was a terrific show. And then 1985-ish, you have there's a feature film script that you had written called The Hunchback of UCLA.
That's correct. A nice ring to it. That's why they chose the title.
It's a swell idea. It's a great idea. Just out of curiosity, when you wrote it, were you thinking of the whole Rocky thing that I'm going to be in it too? Damn it!
I wasn't like a lot of writers. You sort of, as you write something in your mind or whatever, you perform it out just because it gives you the meter and the attitude and the rest of that stuff that you like to do. So I was writing, because I was friendly with the Monty Python guys, I was also friendly with guys at a company called Wits End. They're fairly well-known guys, Ian LaFrenne and whatever. And so they had offices and they let me work there, and Marty Feldman had an office there. And Marty, as I mentioned before, Marty and I were friends. So he asked me one day what I was doing, and I was working on this script, which was The Hunchback of UCLA. So he said, could I read it? And I said, sure. And he started to read it, and he was very, very flattering about it. And he said, you should play the lead. And I said, why? He said, you should do what I did. I was a writer, and I thought I would be good at this. He said, you'd be great at this. I said, well, I don't know. I said, why don't you do it? I can't get it made with me, but I can get it made with you. He said, try and get it made with you first, because you'll be great. You'll know the attitudes. You'll know all the rest of that stuff. I did it in my own stuff out of self-defense. Do it. And, when somebody who you respect and somebody who you like says do it, I figured I'll try. And I did.
You bumped into a funny problem because in the SAG rules there can only be one Allan Katz.
Yeah.
In SAG.
You keep doubling back to how I screwed your career.
But we're building to a climax.
My first name was Gil Adler, and there was apparently another Gil Adler out there.
There is. I'm serious. There is. When I was producing plays in New York, I got a call one day from a guy, and he goes, is this Gil Adler? And I go, yes. He goes, this is Gil Adler. And I said, who is this? I figured it's a gag. Yeah. And this guy says, I'm an attorney on Wall Street, and I keep getting these phone calls from people wanting to send me scripts. And so I think we should meet. And so I went down to Wall Street, and I met this guy, Gil Adler, who was an attorney.
Yeah.
And he tried to hand me like a dozen scripts. I said, yeah, So there is another Gil Adler.
Yeah.
Luckily, he wasn't vying to be partners with any Allan Katz.
Right. Right. God, we could have started 2 production companies.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Double the stories of how we got screwed.
Utter madness.
So you started to bring up my name, the other Allan Katz and SAG. So when I went to SAG, to the Friday before principal photography, I couldn't Taft-Hartley. I'd already done a couple of those things for commercials, so I had to join the union. So they said to me, "There's another Allan Katz and SAG. You can't use your name." And I said, "Well, that's my name. I'm in the Writers Guild. I'm in AFTRA. I'm in the Producers Guild." They said, "Well, sorry, you have to do what like Michael J. Fox did. You have to change something in your name so that it's not exactly Allan Katz."
Is it the spelling too?
Spelling too.
I mean, so it's just there can't be another Allan Katz regardless of the spelling.
Yeah, no, there could be maybe there could be another one with one L. Maybe you could do it, but they told me I couldn't use my name. So I ended up joining SAG under the name Starring Allan Katz. And I sent the other Allan Katz. This is a little crazy. I sent you a scan of the SAG card just so you know.
Oh, yeah.
A traditional made up Hollywood story that isn't true.
There's verification. We checked his ID at the door.
And I'll tell you something. It's really sort of both fun and remarkable. As I pick it now, the Writers Guild is on strike. As I pick it, I run into people that introduce me to other people, and they say, "Are you starring Allan Katz?" And so there are a lot of people who know that story.
That's fantastic. Was that your first time acting for the camera?
Yes, in a sense. I mean, I did a couple of small parts, and I did a show called Thicker Than Water. It's Julie Harris, Richard Long, Malcolm Atterbury. It was a summer replacement show. It wasn't very good, but it was fun to do. And every once in a while, they'd have a part for like 4 lines for a cab driver, and I was around, and so I would do it. I wouldn't do it again because I realize now I took a job away from a real actor.
Yeah,
but I thought it'd be fun to do. So at any rate, I did a few of those things, but nothing where I said, "Okay, I'll be in front of the camera and it'll be about me."
Being an actor on set as opposed to a producer, that was a better, worse, just different experience.
Well, you have to give into it. You have to do what needs to be done, and you can make some suggestions and stuff. But it reminds me of working in the theater where the actors talk to the director, and they're not supposed to talk to the writer.
Right.
Because it just screws up the synergy. I could talk to the director, but I really shouldn't talk to the other actors and say, "Can you play this a little bit more like this?" I could say to the director, "Can I get a little bit more reality out of this from that? Because I think it might be a little bit too broad," but I would never say it to another actor.
Your theater work. You wrote, as we talked about, the libretto for a musical called Zapata.
Yeah.
The one that you did with Harry Nilsson.
Right.
He must have been a fascinating person to work with.
Wonderfully talented.
Yeah.
He's much more of a poet. He really was a lyricist. If you listen to his lyrics and stuff, they're really sweet and they're poignant and they're repetitive. That's why he was perfect for Popeye. I am what I am, what I am, what I am. And just a lovely guy.
You also wrote a show called Partners, which starred Alan Rosenberg when it went up.
Yeah, that was a comedy, buddy comedy. The best reviews I ever got of anything in my life.
Wow.
And I did it in Wilmington, Delaware. Managed to get a theater, and I had such a great time because unlike doing television, doing features, you get to tinker with this thing. You know, you get to see it performance after performance, and you get to change this. I always wanted to change the studio system, at least with doing half-hour sitcoms and saying, let's do the rehearsals in front of an audience. Let's see what the response is. Let's see how we can change this, how we can change the timing, how we can get it better the way they do with shows and previews. But too expensive, I guess. I don't know.
When the Marx Brothers moved over to MGM,
Yeah,
Thalberg made a really a sweetheart deal for them, and he allowed them, before they made Night at the Opera, they took all the comedic bits on the road.
yeah,
And they tried them all out first. They knew they were going to work because they worked on stage. They even
Yeah.
did had a way to do the stateroom scene on
yeah,
stage.
absolutely, absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
When I first moved to LA, I moved into Westwood, and I moved into an apartment complex with Gloria Stewart, who was she and her husband Arthur Sheikman, and he was still alive at the time.
Huh.
They were considered the host and hostess of the Garden of Allah. So they had all these celebrities, Humphrey Bogart and all this stuff.
Wow.
So they have a small dinner party at their house, and they invite me at they were condos. It was just little units. And they invite me over. Groucho Marx.
Oh,
Does it get any better? I was working on Laughing, and I'm having dinner with Groucho Marx and his then companion Aaron Fleming.
right.
You know, I didn't say anything to him. I wasn't funny. I just listened to his stories.
Gil, you had a run-in with Groucho.
Oh yeah, I did a play called El Grande de Coca-Cola
Oh, sure, I know about that.
in London, and then in New York, and we brought it out to LA. And I said to my
I saw
press,
it here.
yeah, and I said to my people, could I just want the place to be filled with comics the opening night,
Yeah,
and so bring people in from Vegas, do whatever you have to do, but I'll do something nice for you. I don't know what it is if you can get Groucho Marx there, because he's my hero. I love Groucho Marx. So opening night, they don't know if he's coming. They don't know if he's coming. I'm looking from the balcony down, and I see a beret, and I see smoke coming up. I'm like, holy shit! Is that Groucho? So I go running downstairs from the balcony, and I run into the lobby, and Erin was there.
yeah.
And I said to her, excuse me, where's Mr. Marx? I think I saw Mr. Marx. Is Mr. Marx here? She said, yeah, calm down. He's in the bathroom. I said, oh, and could you hold the curtain 10 minutes? I said, of course we can hold the curtain. Should I go in the bathroom? Is he okay? I mean, does he need any help? She goes, no, I think he'll be
hold something in the bathroom.
Right. I think he'll be just fine. So he comes out, they go back into the theater, and I'm watching him watch the show from above. At the end of the show, I go to my press people, I go, you got to introduce me to Groucho Marx. Just please introduce me. They bring me over to Groucho Marx, and I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, what happens if he didn't like the play? What happens if he looks at me and he thinks I'm crazy because he hated the play? Now I'm getting paranoid. They bring Groucho over, he shakes my hand, and he goes, so you produced this play? I'm going, oh my God, he hated it. And he goes, I said, yes, but now I'm backpedaling.
Yeah, but only
Yes,
in a sense of certainly not a sense of the word.
And he goes, well, let me tell you something. I think this is one of the funniest things I've ever seen in my life. And could you do me a favor? I said, sure. What can I do? He said, could you bring me backstage so I can meet the girls?
I remember seeing it, and that's where I first heard your name. I remember seeing, was it Jeff Goldblum and Ron Silver?
Right.
Yeah.
I brought over the original company, which was Ron House and Alan Sherman and the Low Moan Spectacular, who created the show originally that I saw in Edinburgh.
Right.
And then Equity said, you can't have them any longer. And we made a deal with Equity and said, we could have the original company play for 6 months in any city that we start the show in, but then we had to replace them with Equity people. Yeah. And the first replacement company was Ron Silver and Goldblum.
Yeah. And I work with Ron on Rhoda.
Yeah. Ron was great. Ron was such a sweetheart.
Yeah.
You also did a show called Song of Singapore.
Yeah, it was great fun. great fun. Again, like Zapata getting an opportunity to Potchkey was something, to have it, to do it in front of an audience and say, okay, well, I think that this will work better here. I think we can tighten this. We can do that. And it was great.
It won multiple awards.
Yeah, won a bunch of awards in New York off Broadway. Ran for about 2 years.
It brought you happiness.
Yes, yeah. And I got to be in New York, and I got people to come and see it and like it and stuff like that.
You have been teaching as well.
I did a little bit of that. I'd like to do more of it, actually.
But you were at UCLA and also at Lawrence University in Appleton, Wisconsin.
Yeah, I had a connection there. The guy who owned the ad agency that I first started with in Chicago, he was a major benefactor to this school, and he subsequently became extremely wealthy in the billionaire category. And so he asked me as a favor if I would go there and teach how to do, television, movies, something like that. So we did a small movie there.
How to do what you do.
Yeah. So we did a small movie there. We used as many of the local people as we could, and we did something that was not very expensive, and it was fun to do. And
Bucky and the Squirrels. What is Bucky and the Squirrels about?
Yeah, it was about a rock group that supposedly came from Appleton, Wisconsin, and that 50 years ago they had one hit wonders, and they took off to perform in Europe, and the plane crashed, and they were never found. And now they found them 50 years later, frozen in the Alps where the plane was crashed, and they defrost them and bring them back to life. So now here they are, just really sort of goofy. They don't know what the world is like. And 50 years later, and the IRS comes after them for not paying 50 years worth of back taxes, and they have to try to perform again in order to pay that off or go to jail. Kind of silly.
Sucks coming back to life.
Yeah.
This is the wall I'm coming up against.
Okay.
1985.
Yeah.
I finally arrived in town. Tony, I went. I was born in the East. I'm born outside of. I was born in New York, but grew up in Baltimore. I went to school in New York, and I was a New Yorker in the early 1980s. After I graduated from Vassar, I was in New York. I was going to be a theater guy, and
better credentials than I had. Another reason for you to be pissed off at me.
Credentials. Well, I had hopes and dreams, and I had a friend who'd become an agent at William Morris. Someone from my high school class named Carol Yumkis, and Carol said, you should try writing a screenplay. And so I wrote a screenplay, and she said, that's pretty good. You should come out here and meet and greet people. So in June in 1985. I flew out for a week. And to me, as I flew here, this was the stupidest place on the planet. The land of the avocado head. Why would anybody want to be in Los Angeles? But people were so nice to me. Well, first of all, it was June. June in New York is hot and humid. It's 95 degrees and 1,000% humidity. And I had no money. So, it's not a great existence.
It's romantic.
Yeah. But here in Los Angeles, wow, the weather was great. This was 1985. It wasn't anywhere near as crowded as it is now. And, well, yeah, like I said, people were great. I'd go to meetings and people would just blow smoke up my ass, which was a very strange experience and very appealing. My agent took me to a screening when I did a world premiere of St. Elmo's Fire.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very intoxicating. I think the fourth morning I was here, I had nothing to do with someone said you should take a drive through Topanga Canyon. I said it was 1985. It was a lot less crowded than it is today. And the drive from the 101 through the Santa Monica Mountains, they plunge right into the Pacific at PCH. And by the time I got to PCH, it was done. I didn't give a fuck about New York anymore. I was moving to Los Angeles. The place had completely seduced me. And I decided, okay, I'm going to take my shot at this. So I'm going to meetings And I had a script that was taken around, and I had this other idea that I was pitching. And I walk into these meetings and I'd sit down, hello, how are you? And they'd say, we got to tell you, we love your script, The Hunchback of UCLA.
Oh God.
And the first,
I'm
first
the
time,
punchline of your story.
oh yeah, and the first time you go, oh, that's
Is this
not
a real podcast, or are you just doing this to
it's
piss me off?
this is a Japanese game show. It's one of those crazy Japanese game shows. That's what I felt like it was in. So of course
you were thinking of Alan Katz.
wait, you say, well, that's I didn't write that.
Yeah.
And then the strangest look comes over their faces, like, what the fuck are you doing sitting across from us? And no, I wrote this script called whatever it was called, Down to Earth, and I think they were trying to recall if they'd read it. They said, remind us of what that was. Those meetings never went well after that. They never recovered. There was always a rhythm that was missing. And then after 2 or 3 of those, I got smart, and they'd say, we love The Hunchback of UCLA. What's happening to it right now? And I'd say, I don't know. We've got a couple of places where we think we can get it set up. But I've got something else here that I think is you'll like even better. And at least the meetings wouldn't die. And eventually, the thing that
I hear something crazy.
Yeah.
I never had a meeting like that where somebody said, we read your script, The Hunchback of UCLA, and we think it's really terrific. Do you have anything else?
Really? Well, I got all those. Good.
And the name of the restaurant was the Smokehouse.
Oh,
yeah.
House, of course.
I just couldn't.
That's in Burbank.
Maybe when you said blowing smoke up your ass.
Oh, well, there you go.
That was a clue.
So
I'm just trying to trigger you.
So, yeah. Alan, one fact that you left out of that story was who else did you meet on that trip to Los Angeles?
Oh, well, yes. And on that very first trip to Los Angeles, among the people that I did meet with who had never read your damn script, as far as I know, this guy, Gil Adler. And
also, I must say, I know
which Gil Adler.
Yeah, there you go.
I must say, after all these years, I guess I should come clean. I thought you were the other Alan Katz.
Well,
imagine your disappointment.
I was.
No, his disappointment, not your disappointment. I alluded earlier to the fact that I could have had Roseanne instead of you, pal.
How do you mean that?
All right.
I didn't have Roseanne. I worked on the show, but I didn't have.
Well, there you go. I was young and arrogant. I thought stupidly. When I first got to town in 1985, I was part of a regular Sunday afternoon pickup softball game in the park.
Right.
And it was all stand-up comedians. And among the stand-ups who played on a fairly regular basis was Jerry Seinfeld, a couple of really well-known guys. Tom Arnold was a regular. Everybody did Vin Scully. And so it was, the craziest thing was, every bit of game action, you had 11, 12 Vin Scullys calling it at the same time. The most amazing thing. It was great fun. All right, bunch of years go by, and suddenly I get the job of a lifetime doing Tales from the Crypt. And the first season is that Gil and I are on the show is hugely successful. Instead of getting canceled, it gets ordered for another season. And suddenly, hey, shit's happening. We're in pre-production on our second season, filling like a player. And my assistant walks into my office, says, Tom Arnold's on the phone.
Yeah.
And I think, oh, isn't that nice? My old friend, Tom Arnold, my softball friend, is calling to commiserate.
Invite me to an all-star game.
We're in the same business, he and I. Yeah, he arrived a long time ago, and I finally arrived. God damn it! And hey, Tom, how are you? Hey, Alan, how are you, man? And he just goes right into the, hey, man, I'm doing Roseanne, and man, we got problem here and a problem there, and it's just not organized. I don't trust this person. I don't trust that person. We really need someone who we can trust because you've got so much experience. You've done so many great sitcoms. You're the sitcom guy. And suddenly it occurs to me, my friend Tom is not calling his softball playing friend. He's calling you. And so I finally got, Tom, I think you mean to be calling him the other Allan Katz. And he goes, what? And I said, you and I used to play softball together, 1985. He went, oh yeah. Hey, how are you, man? I went, I'm good. Is the job offer still good? He went, oh no, man. No. Hey, I'll catch you later. And he hung up.
Yeah.
And I think he called you next. I guess you did me a favor.
I think I did, although I weathered it okay. It was not great fun. It's nice to work on something that's successful. It's nice to get paid, but there was just a lot of stress involved in it, and
I'm grateful they got the other Allan Katz in that case. The Allan Katz who was the actor who
there's a Canadian Alan Katz as the actor.
I know there are a bunch of acting credits under the name Allan Katz. I'm not sure if they're yours or if they might be the other guys who they've given to you.
There are a lot of are his. It's like and I get co-opted with other. I was working on an animation idea, and a friend of mine that I had gone to high school with, she married a great illustrator named Elwood Smith, and he did a lot of stuff in New Yorker and whatever for years and years, and he has been writing children's books and he'd been doing the illustration, and the guy who was writing the books was a guy named Alan Katz. So when he told his wife that he was working with Alan Katz, she said, I went to school with him. And so there was that kind of confusion going on. And finally, I met him at a class reunion, and he was, who the fuck are you? And we became friends, but then I wanted him to do the illustration for this thing. And he said, I don't know if I can do it. I'm already working with another Alan Katz. It's a little too crazy.
It's a weird thing to have a name that, well, not just a couple other people have, but a lot of other people, and people who are ever present in your life.
The guy who's the ambassador to Portugal
is that a guy named Alan?
Portugal in the Obama administration.
Oh yeah.
There's another guy who's on Antiques Roadshow. Another Alan Katz is on it.
Like I said, I grew up in Baltimore, but I went to summer camp in Maine every year from the time I was 6 to the time I was 12. And for 4 of those years, I shared a cabin with a guy named Alan Katz.
Wow.
I couldn't even have a fucking summer camp away.
You want to hear something? This is really remarkable. My wife's name is Gil Adler. What are the odds?
Oh, that bombshell.
In that case, what are we having for dinner, honey?
I'll ask Orson Welles. Hold on.
I'll leave you with one less Groucho Marx story. Please. When I first came out to LA, I found out the address where he lived. And I used to drive to his house. I'd park my car and I'd sit in the car waiting to see if he would come in or come out. Yeah. And occasionally he would come out and he would be driving his daughter, Linda, to school. Right. And I would break out in a sweat, and I would just sit there after he passed and I saw him driving, and I would just sit there going, I just saw Groucho Marx driving his daughter to school. I can't believe it.
I know. It's such show business legend and royalty.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem real.
I'm kind of impressed that I've been partnered for so many years with Groucho Marx's stalker. And on that bombshell, we thank you so much for sitting in with us.
This has been so much fun.
This was great.
You tell me some guy who doesn't like talking about himself, he's crazy. I'm glad you found me. I'm glad I found you.
We will.
I'm glad I found the both of you.
For the crypt. Let me know. I'd love to do anything.
well, we will continue this conversation because I don't think any of the three of us are dead yet.
Well, will you let me know?
Absolutely, for sure. Like I said, we should continue this conversation. It is a shame to have gone all this time and to finally meet you and have one conversation.
And we should give Tom Arnold a call.
Yes, a crank call. If he could ring his doorbell and run, I would do that too.
Do you mean the actor or the veterinarian from Topeka?
And on that one, thank you.